We love you!
Hello and welcome to Tribe Talk, the Galway hurling podcast, with me, Patrick Earley and David Connors, where each week we'll discuss and divulge all the goings on in Galway hurling. We'll be taking an in-depth look at the club scene and of course focusing on inter-county, in this Shane O'Neill's first year at the helm, all of which we'll do in the company of some special guests and former Galway greats. So do come along and join us on Tribe Talk, Galway's dedicated hurling podcast.
Well, it was never in doubt, really, was it? You know, it was comfortable throughout, as last Saturday in the Gaelic grounds. No, typical Galway Tipp game, absolutely fantastic and brilliant to come out the right side of it. And you know, we were half worried that maybe there wouldn't be too many more shows to go for the year, but we've 2 or 3 to go this week, and you know, you never know what'll happen on Sunday. Please God, we might have a few more next week. But joined this week by Aonghus Callanan, along with myself and David. Aonghus, great to have you on this week.
Thanks very much, lads. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
You were part of an epic against Tipp yourself 10 years ago. Unfortunately, it was Galway that came out the wrong side of it that time, but good to have the shoe on the other foot this time for sure. Anyhow.
Definitely, you know, you could never, I won't say beat them enough, but you know, it's always nice to get one out of Tipperary. I mean, they've given us enough of heartache over the years, so I think we certainly deserved it. I think overall, especially the second half, you know, it was a great composure shown, and as you said, you know, it's fantastic to look forward to taking on probably the best team in the country next weekend.
Absolutely, and were the games you always really look forward to, Aonghus, going out and playing Tipp?
Oh, of course. I mean, you know, you always knew you were in for a titanic battle with Tipp. You know, there were great hurlers and always brought great physicality to it. So, you know, there was never any doubt about what was coming down the tracks when you were playing Tipperary, and you knew you had to be on the top of your game. So, you know, we always look forward to every game. You know, anytime you got to throw on the Galway jersey was a huge honour, and regardless of who you were playing, but certainly Tipperary, right? Always focused the mind, certainly.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's just like even thinking back to that game, and then obviously the trilogy in 15, 16, 17, even the last, you know, just compared to other games, you know, there's never a moment in them where you just feel like, you know, we have this here, you know. even after Joe got the free, and Johnny at the very last free, would say, and Johnny Murphy allow the puck out, like we were actually rolling, like, oh my God, you'd blow it up, man, will you? You know, it's just they're tough to watch, aren't they?
Oh, we don't make it easy on ourselves, certainly. But, you know, as you said, like, Tipp went 6 points up, and you still sort of thought, you know, this game was going to go down to the wire no matter what. It's just whatever it is between the two sets of players at the moment, they just go right down to the wire. As you said, the 15, 16, you know, there's nothing in it. Game of fine margins, really.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and David, we were obviously there, and we're lucky to be there. And you know, compared to, I suppose, what we'd seen the previous week against Kilkenny, you know, it was pure Galway Tipp going at it, like, you know, and it was kind of what you hoped we were going to get. We weren't sure were we actually going to get it, just given, you know, the time of year we're at, and maybe on a trickier side down the Gaelic grounds, but they certainly produced anyhow, didn't they?
Yeah, it was a cracking game, really enjoyable. As we just were saying it to Aonghus there before we came on air, and privileged to get in, like, you know, just you feel sorry for the supporters down through the years who, you know, who followed Galway all their lives, and now they're being stuck outside or forced to watch it on TV at home. But cracking game. I suppose one thing about it I actually noticed, I didn't find it very bruising. It wasn't a very bruising encounter in comparison to Kilkenny maybe the week before, which was, you know, there wasn't huge hits going in, or, you know, which might actually be a good thing from a Galway standpoint, you know, with Limerick ahead, which will be, they'll hit them with absolutely everything. It seemed to be, you know, lads were finding pockets of space to pick off points, and, you know, there seemed to be, both teams were concentrating really on their own game plans rather than, you know, focusing on the other side. So, yeah, no, just anytime, Aonghus might not say, but anytime you can beat Tipp is great, and you could not beat them enough. So I'll happily say it if you want, Aonghus. Anyway, so if you're beating them by 10, you'd want to beat them by 20. But 2 points will do this time, and sure, we never know if we'll make it a few more next time. But yeah, a cracking trilogy, and even thinking back to 2010 as well. Sure, geez, that was an incredible game. I know you were out the wrong side of it, Aonghus, but, you know, just great entertainment. Like there's nothing like it. We would have said there's nothing like it, but then football had its day there yesterday, and so we'll have to give it its due as well. There was a couple of massive upsets, but yeah, there's still nothing like hurling. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
I think
I'd be good friends with a cabin man anyway, and he's over the moon today, but we'll give him his due.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was one of the first times people were when the Sunday game came on at 9:30 last night. You weren't overly bothered which sport came on first. Usually you'll be hoping for hurling first, but different story last night. Although by the time that they had yesterday's action finished, I kind of thought we were going on to the hurling, but then I remember they had to go and watch Dublin and Meath, so that put a bit of a dampener on it, all right. But no, as regards our own game, as we said, just difficult to watch, and probably not helped. We didn't help ourselves in many ways, but at the same time, fortunate in other certain areas, and the red card obviously was critical. We'll focus on that in a while and look a bit more in depth at it, and having looked back at the game today and gone through a few stats and that, certainly based on the stats, things didn't actually change as much as I thought myself. But for a lot of that second half, you take into account Galway hit 3 wides straight off the bat when they came out after half time. Tipp obviously got the first couple of scores, went to go 6 ahead. Galway obviously, as I mentioned, had a few wides. So there's big momentum in favour of Tipp there, and gradually Galway each kind of back into it, a couple of frees from Joe and that sort of thing, and to turn it around, rather than even the red card, really, it was Hart's goal that turned the game, really, Aonghus, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was an absolutely fantastic finish. I mean, when I saw watching it on TV, you said, this is a point. Like there wasn't really on. Like it was just an outrageous goal, really. At the, most fellas would say, a point is the easy score here, and we'll stay in the game, or keep going for the next puck out. But geez, he went for it, and it was a fabulous finish. Like really, you have to give him credit, because he had kind of missed a sort of a simple point off his left, maybe a minute and a half before that. Mm-hmm. But geez, he had the confidence to go for it, and you have to give him credit. It was a superb finish, really, and certainly sealed the game. Really, I think once that went in, I felt it was Galway's to lose after that.
Just on the goal, Aonghus, a second. There was a fella sitting near me, and his heart was lining up his shot. We better clear this up. I'm not going to name names or anything like that. And he just happened to he had a, what are you doing, I think, or something like that was the phrase he was going. His heart got his shot away. You don't know anything about it. You didn't hear where that was coming from, Patrick, did you?
No, I think it was one of the Tipp lads. He knew the threat heading Hart posed, and he knew where it was heading. So he
sounded
was a bit
like
worried,
a kind of a South Galway accent to me now. But maybe
I think maybe he was talking to Adrian Toohey, is it?
yeah. I wanted to hear him pop himself. Yeah, that was it. But no, I'll hold my hands up for that one now. And I did when I saw him winding up. I said, "Oh my God, why don't you just put it over?" Because as you say, Aonghus, the shot didn't really seem like it was on. And had he gone to miss it, it could have been critical. But thanks be to God, he didn't. But I felt a bit better afterwards when Shane O'Neill even said in his interview afterwards that he wasn't too happy that he went to wind up for the shot. So that made me feel a small bit better about it, But no, as I mentioned, I thought certainly after Barrett went off, we obviously had Pádraig deployed as the sweepers at that stage. But I thought the likes of Hart and Edo pushing up the field and going up and supporting the attack, that's what was really important, I thought, in the closing 10-15 minutes. We got bodies forward to pile the pressure on, and in fairness, the Tipp they were tracking and defending as best they could, but they just ran out of numbers at times. And you saw with the likes of Jason Flynn's point, where Tipp simply ran out of bodies, and we managed to switch it across. And it was the same case with the goal, really. So it was good to see that positive approach and lads flooding forward, knowing that we need to go for this now.
But it seemed to be a tactic, I think, throughout the game. Being honest, Joe Cooney had no bother going forward there in the first half quite a bit. Finton made a couple of bursts up the line there in the first half. And then you had, Sean Loftus was forward, Adrian Toohey, even Dai Burke was up for the sending off. I think he gave the hand pass. And Aidan Hart, so the license was there, the freedom was there. Maybe it's a tactic this year, that if we're playing a sweeper, that the lads have full freedom to bomb on, and it worked to great effect, as you said.
Yeah, I think it's the only way it is going to work if you're going persistent with that, because there are times where, well, all the time you're going to be outnumbered in terms of your five forwards up the other end, so they do need that support, and we'll say when in the first half, we'll say when David Burke was back, at many occasions we kind of only had a 2-man half forward in many respects, but Joseph Cooney was the one, as you say, he was marking Dan McCormick, but he was the one advancing down that flank more often than not, and had a huge bearing on it. So you see what Wexford were doing when they were operating at their best last year. That's what they were doing. They were getting the backs were pushing on and creating scores and taking scores themselves. So there was certainly a more a bit of evolution, I thought, to it this week. And it certainly worked a bit better. Now look, like with Limerick next week, again you probably have to look at it again and tweak it for I suppose who you're playing next week. But in terms of, I suppose, comparing to the Kilkenny game, David, did you feel that we played better than we did against Kilkenny, or not as good? Personally, I thought a lot of lads, when going through the player ratings for the paper this week, a few lads have probably actually got marked down just because I just didn't think things went as well for some lads this week as they had done against Kilkenny.
Yeah, I was the same as that. I didn't have any outstanding performer. Like I don't think I even give anyone a 9. Like, and whereas against Kilkenny, there's maybe 1 or 2 that you could maybe justify it. But it's just interesting that we are trying a few different game plans every game. You know what I mean? It's whatever the opposition we're adjusting to it. You've touched on it there, Aonghus, and I think that's a very good point. Joseph Cooney, that seemed like a clear tactic there. He was bombing up and down the line. He was very like a soccer winger, or even a wing back or someone like that. You know what I mean? He was a platform for attack, and I think he picked off a point, and it was his shot that was blocked down that ended up with wasn't it with a goal as well. So
Cathal Mannion's goal,
Cathal Mannion's first one, yeah. So that's right. So yeah, no, there's definitely. I didn't think it was an outstanding performance by us by any stretch of the imagination. But I suppose we got the job done, and just even on that centre off, you touched on it there, Patrick, a few seconds ago. We were kind of getting back on top even before Tipp lost Cathal Barrett. Like we'd stemmed the tide again after falling 6 behind, and I think we were touching distance them at that point. But the key is probably, if we are going to play a sweeper, that we have to hit good quality ball into the 2 boys inside. And I suppose David Burke wouldn't have a huge amount of experience playing a sweeper role. You know what I mean? Like his normal deliveries would probably be a bit, they wouldn't have to carry as much ground, and it's probably something he wasn't used of, and maybe something it's maybe it's a bit hard to teach old dog new tricks. I'm not calling him old now, but someone that's as experienced as him to do it. I thought Pádraig, when he went back there, his game rose immeasurably. He was fairly quiet for the opening half. I actually thought Alan Flynn was absolutely dominating the midfield. He was dropping back for puck outs. He was picking off scores. At one point, they were down the far side away from us, and Pádraig just started ball watching. He left Alan Flynn in 25 yards of space, and Flynn picked off a point from out near the wing. But definitely, I think Pádraig is definitely more suited to that role now. I think it's probably there'll be plenty of old fellas out there saying, Jesus, why are we going with a sweeper? But I think it's something we're going to be persistent with now, whether we like it or not. I think it's the way Shane O'Neill wants to play, and it's obviously he sees something in there. Maybe it's creating an extra bit of space inside rather than having three inside forwards getting in their way. Maybe it's we're going to have, even if they have an extra body, we're going to have Concannon and Whelan there, and they're going to do damage if anytime they get balls. So it's probably performance overall probably slightly down on Kilkenny. Isn't that actually mad? We were arguably more consistent against Kilkenny for say 55 minutes than we were against Tipp. We kind of hurled in fits and bursts and stuff like that. In maybe even someone like Cathal Mannion, I know he scored 1-3, but he was in and out of the game as well. When he was on it, he was majestic. But that he probably kind of summed it up in a lot of ways, his performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And Aonghus, do you think the sweeper works for us?
Well, it only works if we're able to play the quality of ball into the 2 lads. I mean, if we can, get that 60-40, 70-30 ball into the 2 guys inside, I believe they'll do damage against anybody, no matter who they are marking. The quality of, particularly Conor Whelan, He only needs a 55-45 ball and he's getting it. He's just incredible in terms of his ability to win his own ball, really. And the way Limerick set up, I've no doubt that we'll have to play a sweeper. I think, they're going to drop men back, flood the middle, and Waterford certainly gave a template of how to challenge these guys. And I think they had 2 sweepers nearly against them. So the next day, I've no doubt that we'll be playing somebody back there. And I agree with David. I think Pádraig Mannion is better. He's better in that thing. It's not a position David Burke has much experience of that I'm aware of. Not for Thomas's anyway. I know he drops back as a midfielder, but it's not that free sweeper like. Whereas Pádraig seems to revel in that role and picks up ball and seems to be able to play in, work it through the lines then rather than just getting it and blasting it down the field. So whether it works or not, I don't think we'll have a choice, Patrick, really to answer your question. We're going to be stuck with one next weekend, I believe. And my opinion is if Pádraig's shoulder and everything is all right, I'd be hopefully preferring him there.
Yeah, and I think, the ball into Whelan, I think it was Cahill played it in the second half, the time Connor took on Ronan Maher and drew the free and Maher got a yellow card. Like, there wasn't enough of that really, wasn't there? Even Concannon's one, we'll say, for the red card, that was a very good, obviously just a hand pass, but it was a good sort of a ball for an inside forward. He was out in front. And that's the reason why Barrett was forced into making the foul, because he was caught out. He was trying to make up ground, but they probably need to play more of that ball if we can, obviously next week. And Limerick are going to have Hannon sweeping across, and obviously excellent at it. So I suppose there was probably times where, especially in the first half, where there was simply too much ball hit down the centre into places where Tipp were coming out on top purely because of weight of extra bodies.
Yeah, there seemed to be a lot of old style where lads were just getting it and firing it up the field, and I think that actually was part of the reason why we turned it around in the second half, in that we played it a lot through the lines. Carl Mannion got 2 or 3 scores there from out the field where he was just getting that 20-30 yard pass, rather than the long ball direct in. It just didn't seem to be working really, that straight direct long ball. It has to be diagonal, cut out the sweeper, into the pockets of space for the lads to run into, because once it's down the middle, you're 3-on-2, and all the back has to do is either get it to ground, and you have the extra man there then.
Yeah, and I thought in the first half, obviously Conor Cooney started inside this week, so we didn't have him under puckouts. And you had Whelan, I suppose, was playing as the third member of the full forward, in that he was between the 2 inside of Concannon and Cooney, and between them and the half forward line. So he often actually came out to, I suppose, the 12 position on puckouts because he was needed there. So that's why I suppose you saw him taking an awful lot of his ball down that sideline by the stand. But definitely I thought, when he went inside with Concannon, and as you say, definitely there was a change in approach in terms of playing the ball out and working it out with the hand pass and getting bodies moving. You saw the likes of Cahill came into it hugely in the second half, picking up ball in the half back line and working it. Oftentimes with Ado and getting it in that way. And then even that created space as well for Cahill to get his head up and get his shooting boots on from out there as well. He picked up a couple of fantastic points from midfield. Which is something he's going to do every week if he's afforded that small bit of space from anywhere from his own 65 up. So it's about, I suppose, playing to your player strengths and getting, we'll say, the likes of Cahill on ball there, getting good quality ball into the Concannons and the Whelans, and that's what you need to do next week. And that's what they did do much better in the second half, and why they turned the game around, as you mentioned. Looking at the work-ons from last week that we picked out, the Kilkenny game would have been the conversion rate, which in fairness improved significantly. We scored 323 from 38 shots by my count today, which is conversion rate of 68%, up from 57% last week. So certainly heading in the right direction in that respect. They had 10 wides, 2 shots dropped short, and 1 saved, Concannons, in the first half, which was called back for a free in any case. But 68% conversion rate, 38 chances created, actually a few less chances than last week. But 68% you'd be happy enough with that, but you'd still probably be liking to get that up a small bit higher, and it's up around, I suppose, the 75% mark.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're always looking for a work on in terms of your scoring race. But I thought particularly in the second half there was less wasteful shooting. There was a couple of bad wides there in the first half from distance. They seem to be working the ball around a lot better to a shooter rather than some fella having a pot shot from out the field. So yes, of course, you want to get your percentages up. But I think the weather, again, I haven't looked what it's like for the weekend. The wind there towards we call it the Ennis side of the LIT grounds there seem to be tailing a lot of shots off wide. Mm-hmm. So I suppose maybe we're not given credit for the conditions in terms of the winter hurling that we're not necessarily used to playing at this time of year. And, the wet ball, can make it a lot heavier, and then obviously the wind. So, but I think anything over 70%, the top teams, you have to be hitting that really.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting for the second half, it was scored 114 from 20 shots, and that was including the first 3 shots of the half, which were wides. So after that they scored 114 from 17 shots, 88% on the conversion rate, and that's probably the win of the game in many respects, right there, David.
Yeah, for sure. Although Tipp's conversion rate was phenomenal as well. You have it down there. Yeah. It's 11 from 14, and that in itself it's phenomenal shooting considering they'd 14 men, particularly down the home straight. I thought Tipp looked impressive. They actually looked impressive, 14 men. Just on that conversion rate as well. I suppose one aspect there that might be missing as well. I suppose there was a chance for Conor Cooney that Finton been a burst up the field and he hand passed it through, and Conor maybe miscontrolled it, and Brian Hogan managed to get out and smother it. Whereas that was another scoring opportunity that Galway could have probably capitalised upon. Could have been in a bigger game, like say not in a bigger game, but maybe a game like the weekend you against Limerick in a better, maybe a higher quality opposition. You'll 100% need to be taking that. You needed to make it stick. But yeah, no, the signs were good in the second half. There was plenty there. I thought in particular the substitutions made a huge contribution. I thought Adrian Toohey was fantastic when he came on. I was just chatting to you beforehand, and he directly set up 1-2. So that's fine. And the only critical point
and stop the goal.
Yeah. And that was a massive positive. Which I suppose it balances out at the end of the day when Ronan Maher done the same on Whedon. So yeah. We might leave the black card for today, that discussion. But yeah, so he set that up. Sean Loftus and Jason Flynn both scored a point. Lovely crossfield ball to Adrian Toohey for the goal. So there's a bit of contribution there. And I suppose one thing that might go unnoticed when Brian Hogan was coming up for that close range free, Jason Flynn gave him a nice rattle and left a few words in his ear as well. Let him know what he could do with it. Which was I actually was delighted to see, because sometimes Jason is this kind of image of maybe being a bit too nice and too soft around the challenge, but he came up and he was right at his ear and it's these small margins. If you could throw Hogan off his stride for a few seconds, what harm? I know another Tipp player came in and dragged Flynn away for a finish, but yeah, no, I thought the subs made a massive contribution. That Loftus was good when he came on as well. So the signs are there. There's going to be another selection headache, I suppose, for Shane O'Neill and their management team this coming week, which is always good. You want your subs coming on and making an impact, because I think we spoke beforehand about Tipp's impact from the subs bench in the game against Cork. But Willie Connors didn't have a whole. Finton did well actually on him. John McGrath, I don't really remember him hitting too much ball. Paddy Cadell was actually okay, but I think by and large our subs might have actually swung it first, and it was a brave call by O'Neill to actually haul the 2 boys off at half time. It's if that went wrong, I'm sure he would have come under a lot of criticism, but 2 experienced heads, 2 All-Ireland winners, the midfield partnership and an All-Ireland winning team, and to hook them both at half time, and we're going to assume there was no injuries because I haven't heard of anything else, and to bring on Adrian and bring on Jason Flynn, and if anything else, that probably stemmed the tide. I know we shot 3 wides initially with our first 3 attempts, but from there on I thought we were the much better team even before Barrett sending off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that was something we were probably a small bit critical of last week too, Aonghus, the fact that maybe changes weren't made, even though things were going quite well for 3/4 of the game. Changes weren't made until things had gone wrong. Whereas I thought the last the use of the bench was much better in that. even we said the taking off of Shane Cooney and Finton in the backs and bringing on Loftus and Darren Morrissey there as well near the end. Even for those extra couple of minutes, when we are in the ascendancy and we're going well, still to get the fresh legs in there is very important.
Absolutely. I mean, the lads on the sideline have all the stats. I mean, they all wear the GPS. They know the hits they're getting. They know the mileage they have put in the legs, and also conversely know if they're not making the moves and not getting involved. So I certainly agree. This is our third weekend in a row now. The subs are going to be hugely important. Croke Park is a big pitch. The Waterford Limerick game was a real bruising encounter. You can see the physicality of the Limerick lads, like around the middle eight there. They'll really try to impose themselves on teams. And as you said, David, virtually all of the subs made a positive contribution. I mean, Jason probably missed 2 other points as well that he probably disappointed with. And Adrian Toohey made a huge contribution to Sean Loftus. So certainly you need all your 26, definitely. And I think they'll be vital again next weekend to make a positive impact. I mean, we didn't see Niall Burke either at all. So
yeah,
he's a man who's probably out for motivation to try and get himself back into the running as well. So I think we're going to need all the 5 subs next weekend anyway, definitely.
Just on motivation for lads to get back in, I suppose. Jesus, like you wouldn't think of it, but Aidan Hart was actually a man who was dropped the week before, and his response to actually being dropped by Shane O'Neill has been fantastic. Like he came on, he showed up the defence. That corner there that was a real a real danger zone seemed to be from a Kilkenny standpoint. Hart came back and he did a fine job there. And then his performance the last day as well, you know what I mean? He maintained his place. It's another point where he's bounced back in his career. Maybe 2015, I suppose he was hauled off after 25 minutes in an All-Ireland final, and then he strives 2 years later, and he's probably a key player in Micheál Donoghue's setup, and he's still a key player now. I think he's 32 at the minute. But just it's great for lads when they are dropped. You touched on Niall Burke there. You'd like to see a Niall Burke response now if he does get game time the next day. Do you know what I mean? To show, I'm good enough to hold on to, or to get a jersey back, rather than, some lads can kind of wilt and fall away when they're, or even Davy Burke and Johnny Cohen, like they'll obviously have a point to prove the next day as well, which is massive from a Galway standpoint. You want these lads as hungry as ever, and that's probably the case in Kilkenny when they were so successful. Lads had cut each other in half, down at the training ground for a jersey, and that's probably what we want more than anything else.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's no better motivation, I mean, I'd be delighted to see David Burke starting midfield the next day, because he's going to want to atone for what happened,
Yeah.
And I've no doubt that he'll put in a phenomenal performance. You know what I mean? And I think the midfield area, sure, that's Limerick's linchpin. So we're going to need all hands on deck around there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think another aspect of the performance against Kenny that we earmarked that needed improving on was the free count, David. And even though actually overall the free count is actually up this week, and that we conceded 16, having conceded 14 against Kilkenny, there was less. They improved in terms of our backs conceding less free. Our backs and midfielders conceded 7 frees, and our forwards actually gave away 9 of them. So that, I suppose, indicates huge kudos, I suppose, to the backs, and that they improved hugely in that respect. 10 of the 16 frees were scoreable. Tipp scored 8, which isn't a bad return either. But very well done to the backs and midfielders. But forwards probably need to smarten up a small bit. Conceding 9 frees there, it's just giving Tipp cheap outs, and couldn't afford to do it the last, and definitely can't afford to do it again next Sunday.
That's for sure. But I think, would you believe, there's a funny one there on Twitter. I don't know, do you follow him? His name is Brian McDonald, but he had stats up last year from last year's championship, where the team that actually conceded the most frees likely actually wins the game. You know what I mean? So it's probably a bit about being intelligent where you actually commit the frees. Anything, if you're conceding them in the full back line, Tipp's full back line, hypothetically, it's not actually the worst thing, because it can actually give you time to reset and get your shape back and stuff like that if you're smart about it. But yeah, no, I'd agree. I think those frees against Kilkenny, where we're conceding them, were criminal, and especially with someone like TJ on them. Dahi, I suppose we'll have to touch on him. He was a bit unlucky. He conceded one initially. He was unlucky on Seamus Callanan, and then he was coming out with a ball and he threw it up and he managed to foul it. So that was two. But his performance after that, after a slip for the Callanan goal as well, you know what I mean? Just to bounce back like that, and then by and large actually dominate proceedings back there from there on is a mark of the man. Because in fairness, he's probably still not anywhere near 100% fit. He was kind of having a word with one of the physio or the doctors there at the first water break. So I was thinking, Jesus, is he under pressure here? But just the mark of the man to produce a performance like that after the initial struggles as well. You know, he's obviously a hugely determined person, because like a lot of fellas, you know, some fellas maybe not at intercounty level, but some fellas, you know, after a nightmarish start like that, where you're probably at fault for 1-2, suddenly, you know, you're thinking, Jesus, this is going to be an absolute nightmare of a day. But just his ability to bounce back, and by and large, the Prince did well. I think all the matchups they did fairly well. Maybe outside of Garage, maybe on Noel McGrath initially, that was probably a bit of an issue there. Probably wasn't a matchup that you'd really want, but I think we'd earmarked other positional matchups, we'll say, and they probably didn't want to diverse. And it was a matter of who was left for Garage then, and it just happened to be Noel McGrath. And I think you were saying he picked up 3 from Garage, all right, and one of them was from further out the field. And then I suppose Garage went to 6 at the beginning of the second half, and I think he conceded one on Michael Breen as well. So yeah, no, his form might be a slight worry from a Galway standpoint. He hasn't set the words right now in the last 2 games, and you know, against Limerick, who have a punishing, you know, half forward line, and they can hurt you from there. If he is to start saying that half back line, he's probably going to need to lift it a small bit.
Yeah, I thought, in fairness, I thought he did improve thereafter. You know, after conceding that point of Breen, I thought he had a decent final quarter. I thought broke up more ball and won a bit more ball on the ground. And Aonghus, where would you see him fitting in potentially next week?
Yeah, well, I think you have to play him centrally, really. You know, it's where he plays most of his hurling for his club. It's where he's been most successful for Galway. You know, I think he was even in corner back there for a bit at the weekend when Owen McGrath went in corner forward. And I don't think that's something you want to see. Definitely not against Limerick anyway, with Peter Casey and Gallan and Mulcahy. You know, I don't think that'd be the right matchup, really. Much prefer to see him, you know, in the middle, lording it under ball, or, you know, stopping lads running down through the middle. And you know, somebody who's sort of a fixed positional player, rather than you don't want him on somebody who's going to float too much, really. I'd much prefer to see him, you know, 6. I think that's where we get the most out of him.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we do know from Limerick is that, you know, the setup of the team is going to be pretty much what it has been for the last year or two. There's one position that's been kind of going up for grabs the last couple of weeks, and we saw David Reedy starting at centre forward the last day, and had been Keane Lynch before that, with Kyle Hayes back wing back, and, you know, Darragh Donovan in there as well. So that's the one position that's up for grabs in the Limerick setup. Obviously they'll have Richie English is back in training as well now, so he may start if he's back fully fit. But by and large, you kind of know what you're going to expect off Limerick, so it's a case of preparing for that and countering it, and hopefully going a small bit better than we did in 2018.
Yeah, sorry, absolutely. Sorry, it was just slow and coming through there. Yeah, no, definitely. You'd hope it's going to be a touchdown there. It's going to be a bruising encounter anyway. In terms of that, like Limerick are so punishing. Aonghus, you mentioned it there around that middle third. They're phenomenal in their work rate, their ability to get round, you know, the men on ball. They can have 3 or 4 lads swarming the man in possession. You know, so we're going to need to move the ball quickly, and we're going to need to man up physically and match them at that. In fairness to us, we probably do have the physicality, we have the stature there, like Garage and Joseph Cooney and Fenton, and, you know, these type of lads, they won't shy away from a battle, and particularly on the other side as well, you know. So we said it after the Wexford game. It looked like, I actually thought at the time that Galway were probably the most likely to match Limerick. I suppose there was the blip then against Kilkenny, but outside maybe those 15 minutes, by and large, we probably do look like the most likely to match Limerick overall. You'd hope anyway.
Yeah,
I'd agree. Yeah, I mean, Galway.
Yeah, go on.
I think Galway, you know, are the most physical team out there, really, outside of Limerick. I agree completely that, you know, I watched Clare there the weekend and I said, Jesus, Galway would walk over these lads. You know what I mean, physically. But you look at Limerick's half-back line there, you know, Kyle Hayes, Jimmy Burns, Hannon, three very, very big men. And I don't know how we've mentioned it there, Dave, or Patrick, but puck outs are going to be so crucial because we didn't really seem to do that well on the long puck outs. Would I be right in that?
Definitely, yeah. We're just coming to it here actually because you know it was an area that again we said that the stats proved that we did quite well against Kilkenny, and we were saying that maybe we shouldn't have been conceding so many short puckouts to Kilkenny because we were having a good deal of success when they did go long. But both on the tip puckouts, but especially on our own puckouts, we struggled hugely the last day when we did go long. You know, looking at the overall stats, we'll say Galway won 22 from 36 puckouts, which is a return rate of 61%, which is actually up 2% on the week before. But it's when you look into it a bit closer that you realise things aren't actually as good as they appear because 17 of those were just short puckouts. They went long 19 times throughout the course of the game and only won 5 of them. So that's a return rate of 26%, and right there is a huge issue, you know, and it's going to be even tougher, really, on raining down ball on top of that Limerick half back line, you know. So it's a case of either putting more strength ourselves in that half hour line or purely sticking to the short puck out, really.
Yeah, well, you look at the 2018, you know, they conceded the puck outs to us there in the first half completely and attacked the cornerbacks then and got a bit of success out of it. Like, so there was a couple of set plays there in the first half I noticed between Pádraig Mannion and Dave Burke, and I think we got 1 or 2 scores out of them. So hopefully they'll be able to resurrect some of them there. There was a couple of interchange and diagonal balls that seemed to be a set play where Joseph Cooney then bombed up the wing, and I think he might have got a score out of it. So I think we're going to have to be inventive, certainly. There's no way we're just going to be able to keep Lorden ball down. You know, outside of Joe, who again I thought was very impressive the last day. You know, we may need to look at real ball winners rather than stickmen, if you know what I'm saying. In the half hour.
I agree, yeah. And I think you know Conor Cooney's absence was felt there, and you know Conor, he had an alright first half, gave away 4 frees, which is definitely something he'd want to smarten up on a small bit. But his absence in the half hour then I thought was felt, and you know, just in terms of ball winners. But even on the ground, I thought we struggled as well. You know, whereas had done better in that regard against Kilkenny. You know, there was little, or there was 2 or 3 puckouts, 1 clean. Conor Whelan won one for us in the first half. You know, but that aside, most of the puckouts were won on the ground. But I think, you know, your goalie becomes very important against Limerick too, in that, as you say, becoming inventive with your puckouts. And I think in Aina we have a goalie who's extremely good at varying his puckouts, in that, you know, he can go short to a cornerback, he can go a sort of a mid distance and pin a halfback straight to hand. And we've seen the last couple of games a couple of brilliant puckouts in over the top, spotting an attacker who's kind of drifted away into space on his own. So that ability to change it up, and I suppose to keep Limerick on their toes and not have them realising that, you know, every puckout's going to Aidan Hart, will say. The ability to change it up there so that it's not as easy for them to maybe set a trap on our defence is very important.
Yeah, I do think we have plenty of maybe slightly more the options maybe on the puck out than we did in 2018. Though you would be comfortable hitting, say, Shane Cooney and Fintan Burke as well with puck outs there, you know, short, if you had to, because they're absolutely fine. They're confident and comfortable on the ball, and there's no hassle there. Movement and Inga summed it up perfectly. We will need to be inventive though, because Hannon, Burns, and Kyle Hazley, if he plays back there, they will gobble up puckouts to beat the band. And the stats there alone, they just show that it is a potential worry for us now. I suppose if one thing we probably are missing, maybe someone like a Johnny Glynn there, who you could pepper with ball, but you don't want to become predictable either, like you said, Patrick. So that was probably one thing that we probably did become overly predictable on when we did have the option of Johnny Glynn, was we looked to hit him with absolutely everything instead of varying the play. I suppose going 19 long from 36 will probably leave 17 short. So there is a bit of variation there as well. So like we're not 100% always going to be going long either. There is the option there that we kind of have to keep Limerick second guessing.
Yeah, but it's important that a short puck out doesn't just end up being a long ball down the field, and that's what I mean by it's a catch-22. You know, you have to do your best to keep playing through the lines, and if one or two of them breaks down, it's important to have the head strength to keep at it. You know, one or two of them are going to turn over, and there's going to be a score or a free, and there'll be lots of fist pumping and roaring. But it's important to keep a cool head and, you know, keep through the process, because if a cornerback gets it and just hits it on the field, it's the same as a puck out.
Yeah. And I think that's I suppose the idea of it too, and that, you know, you want to try avoid that area of the field and get it in straight into the two boys inside if you can, and obviously, as you say, delivering in favourable ball into the two boys and take that half-back line out for completely if you can.
Absolutely, and in fairness to them, they're actually very good at winning their own ball, Callanan and Whelan. Like Whelan in particular, like he was the only one for Galway. I was looking at today. I think he was the only one to actually make a clean catch from a puck out the last day. So, you know, he is capable. And like, you want to hit him with good quality ball, but in fairness to him, he is capable of winning the rotten ball, the ball that you don't want to see either. You know, but, yeah, no, it needs to be. I'm interested to see what Galway actually bring to the table in terms of restarts, because they're a huge part of the game now. Like it's probably taken hurling a small bit longer to catch up than football. You know, they've been vital in football for well over a decade, whereas in hurling it's only maybe the last 7-8 years that we're really thinking about puck outs and how a valuable platform they are, instead of just hitting it long and getting it as far away from your goal as possible. But credit to Ian Murphy. He's only third championship game the last day, but he's a phenomenal stickman, and he has that range in his puck outs. He can you know, bomb it absolutely huge if he needs to be, but he can pick these 25-yard passes as well. You know, that can open up a bit of space and, you know, a gap there. And if you have someone like Aonghus said, Joseph Cooney, just if he happens to take off down the line there and maybe cause a bit of a headache, you know, and you could maybe find someone like him, you know, just a small bit of invention, and, you know, maybe a diagonal ball rather than these lineal straight balls coming in as well. You know, they're not the forwards ball you want to be seeing. You want to kind of see maybe a bit of an angle on it, or, you know, a bit of a crossfield pass, you know, rather than these lineal passes, which maybe Limerick they'll make hay if those sort of balls are the ones coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think there's another thing you mentioned, Aonghus, at the very start of the programme, was the composure that Galway showed, particularly in the second half, and even after the red card. You know, I thought it was impressive the way Galway managed it from there on. You know, there was no sense of panic either, or no sense of we need to make something happen here straight away because they're gone down a man. Like, very often you see the team that lose the man take over the initiative and kind of drive on from there, you know. But that never happened, and the game kind of continued in sort of the pattern that it had been developing at in the third quarter. And that composure obviously was important the last, and it's going to be very important going forward as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, something unusual there. You know, Dahi and Pádraig seemed to split to the two kind of corners, and you hit the ball to Dahi, and then Dahi hit it over the far side of the field back over to Pádraig. And I think that happened once or twice. And Pádraig then had, you know, 30, 40 yards in front of him. So, you know, it takes a bit of composure and that to have the guts to do that. You know, it's obviously a risky ball across your own square and all that. But I agree with you, especially as well up front. You know, lads weren't taking on, you know, mad shots over the shoulder or anything like that. It was work to the process, get it to a better man, you know, carry the ball, pop to another man, keep moving. And it's definitely a slight change of style in Galway, I think, in that we're working the ball a lot more into a scoring position rather than, you know, I suppose, trying to work the ball to one guy only and then him going for the score.
Yeah, I think we have players that are adaptable too, and they're able to play it whatever way it comes. And if there's going to be times where you're under pressure in the backs, and there's times you just have to simply lump it and get it out of there, you know. And it's important that, you know, players are comfortable in dealing with that, as well as not having, I suppose, being nailed down as to this is how we play, and if things don't work out like that, what are we going to do? You know, we have intelligent hurlers all around, good quality hurlers that can play it whatever way it comes as well, and that's very important for them as well.
Absolutely. There's we touched on it again without just repeating it. They're all able to hurl from 1 to 15. There's no real passenger there in terms of a stick man, like so you can hit probably 95% of the team, with a puck out if it needs to be, and you'd be confident of them maybe hopefully using it well. That was the big issue in 2018, where we didn't really know what to do once the Limerick gave us up the sharp puck up. But we're obviously going to be fully aware now of that's what's going to come more than likely. You know what I mean? They'll want us launching ball down on top of that half back line, or them dropping a bit deep and hitting the likes of Hannon who'll be covering across. But yeah, no, it makes for a fierce, interesting matchup anyway, if nothing else. And I'm just in fairness to the management, they've been very inventive so far. They've tried a few things, and though they might get a bit of criticism from the bar stoolers and the likes of ourselves at times, they're willing to try things, and they're brave in their calls. So I couldn't call what they're going to do, so it's going to be interesting in that sense to see what we have to look forward to.
For sure, yeah. I think we're going to have a full preview show coming up in a couple of days' time, but we won't have Aonghus for that. So just before we finish up, Aonghus, we get your thoughts on how you think it's going to go Sunday. Do you think? Well, I suppose we're all Galway here, so we all have to predict a Galway win, really. But I suppose the question is, how do Galway get the job done on Sunday?
Well, I suppose it's something that hasn't really been mentioned is what I'd say is the Shane O'Neill factor. I mean, he would know an awful lot of these Na Piarsaigh guys, and probably when he was training and managing Na Piarsaigh, he would have played against all of these Limerick players and seen them in club action. So he should have a very good inside knowledge of the Limerick team, what their tricks, their set plays and all that are, and it's fairly clear what their style is. So hopefully they'll be able to put in place, as David said, they're very flexible, a good measure to cut out the ball to the inside guys inside. I mean, Waterford kind of did that reasonably effectively. You stop Gillan, stop Mulcahy, stop Casey. You stop a lot of their scoring threat. So Galway, first of all, I think need to cut out them guys, and then, as we said on the puck outs, get a good platform from our own puck outs. And if we can get reasonable ball into the two guys inside, I think they will do serious damage. I mean, it's arguable whether Dan Morrissey is a natural fullback. He kind of seems to be a small bit converted, I would think. He's spent most of his hurling out around the middle or wing backs. So I think Whelan, could have a real big bearing on this game if we get decent ball inside to him there. And if they have Kyle Hayes wing back, I'm fairly confident Joe will do damage off him as well. So, obviously we're hoping for a Galway win, but it's certainly going to be a tight game. I mean, they have the extra week rest as well. So Galway get a good start, stay in the game. Certainly don't let happen what happened the last time in 2018 or in the league earlier on in the year, to go way behind early days. Get in the game, get ahead and plough on and stick. You have to make the middle eight a battleground. That's where Limerick are winning or beating teams, in and around the middle there. And if Galway can flood that middle, get good decent ball into the lads inside, I've full confidence that we can do it.
Absolutely, and they're going to be taking great confidence into the game too, Aonghus, off the back of this win, and knowing themselves that there's more in them as well. It's a good way to be heading into the game, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as you said there, nobody is going to be satisfied with their, while they'll be happy, they'll all be aware that there's areas to improve on. As you said, the markings for players, not very many fellas were hitting the nines or whatever. So certainly gives lads huge motivation. It's an All-Ireland semi-final. It's in Croke Park. What more do you want this time of year? Lads will be itching to get out there.
That's for sure. Well, look, I think we'll leave it there for tonight, lads. We'll as we mentioned, myself and Dave will be back in a couple of days' time. We'll have a full preview of the Limerick game to come, and we'll definitely be picking up on a nice few of the points you mentioned there, Aonghus, for sure. And hopefully we'll have someone along with us to get their thoughts on it as well. But as for last weekend, fantastic to get back on the road, get back in the winner's circle. And as you mentioned, David, you can never bet tip enough. So we'll take that with us for another year. What's that? Three of the last four gone our way, so we'll take that for sure. But Thanks a million, Aonghus, for joining us, and myself and Dave will see you in a couple of days' time. So hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll chat soon.